our focus will primarily be on the opportunities and challenges associated with privatizing in Pakistan's power distribution companies. But before that, let's briefly review the current landscape of Pakistan's power sector utility. So the power sector utility in Pakistan faces significant financial strains, operational inefficiencies, and outdated infrastructure challenges. Back in 1990s, there was this only one central organization, WAPDA, that was operating in a vertically integrated utility model. It was involved in all aspects of electricity generation, transmission, and distribution. At that time, in an effort to improve the performance and inefficiency of the sector, the government introduced a process of unbundling WAPDA. At that time, the vertically integrated WAPDA was unbundled into 10 DISCOs, 4 GENCOs, 1 TRANSCOs, and IPPs. However, these reforms did not receive the objective due to lack of competition and incomplete market liberalization or privatization. As privatization has been proposed as a potential solution to these challenges by introducing greater efficiency, reducing the financial burden on the government, and attracting the much-needed investments. Given the recent escalation of inefficiencies and financial losses, there is a renewed focus on privatization, supported by the recommendations from the International Monetary Fund as a part of the broader reform strategy for power sector. The recent budget also includes the privatization of power distribution companies as part of the privatization program for 2024 to 2029. Globally, privatization has been a widely adopted strategy to enhance efficiency and create market-driven power sector. However, privatization do come with its own challenges, which we will be discussing with our experts today. So without further ado, I would like to request Mr. Qasim Ali Shah for opening remarks. Mr. Qasim Ali Shah is the Deputy Executive Director of STPI. Sir, over to you.
Thank you so much, Sana. Assalamu alaikum, colleagues, friends, and online participants. It's indeed a pleasure to be here with you and with this august panelists who are going to educate us on the challenges and the opportunities within the privatization of the power sector. So I'm thankful to the Chief Executive Officer of the KA Electric basically to join us here in this discussion today, and perhaps from the lessons we learned from the KA Electric experience would help us to take this discussion forward. We also have a report from STPI, which will be launched today. Yeah, so we are going to launch this report as well, which is basically to look into this issue, and this will provide some more insights. And perhaps we have tried to conduct this report basically at a time when the government is basically striving to privatize the power sector, and this is one example where the government is trying to put it as a panacea to all of our ills in the power sector. And we have to listen, and perhaps the past experience from the other sectors would help us to understand how far we will be successful. And so, as Sana said, that there are challenges within the power sector. Yes, there are challenges in the power sector and pretty well known. There was a procession only a couple of weeks back, a week-long procession against the hike in the electricity prices, and tomorrow again, one political party is calling another strike across the country. So this not only describes what is the challenges which we are facing in the power sector, but also is a reflection of what STPI is and institutes like STPI are trying to do here. STPI basically has the mandate to provide advice to the governments and the private sector on issues of the public interest. And these consultations are basically part of the STPI working our modus operandi, where we try to engage the various stakeholders and try to learn from their experiences. And then those experiences are basically shared as the recommendations, if there are strong recommendations, and there are some new pathways suggested through these discussions to the government, and not only just the government, but also the private sector as well. So we have the issues in the power sector. These are the transmission related, these are the infrastructure related, these are the there are strategies perhaps which are outdated, and that's why we are facing these challenges today. But the most important here is that what we have learned over the years and how we are going to use those learnings basically to strategize for our future. So without any further ado and without taking much of the time, and I'm myself very much eager actually to listen from the K Electric experience and also from our panelists. So I stop here, but thank you so much for joining us today here. And we believe that discussion will be fruitful, and we will continue hosting these consultations in future as well. And we look forward to your participation, active participation in those deliberations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Qasim Saab, for sharing the opening remarks. As Qasim Saab have mentioned that SDPI is launching its report on privatization of Pakistan's power sector utility today. So there is a technical presentation on that report, which will be presented by Dr. Khalid Waleed. Dr. Khalid Waleed is the research fellow at SDPI. I would request Dr. Khalid to please present it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Zainab, and thank you so much, everybody, for joining us on this very crucial sort of thing. Thank you, Monisa, for giving us time, as he's the one key player, key stakeholder in all this debate around power sector and its privatization. The report that is produced here is privatization of Pakistan's power utility sector, the lesson learned and what are different opportunities. What I would be presenting are different. What is the background of Pakistan's power sector? Global examples of privatization, varied outcomes globally. Obviously, the very brief history of privatization in Pakistan. K Electric case study. What are different technical parameters of K Electric that has improved, deteriorated, recovery ratios, financial health, how these two have increased over the period of time, digitalization and customer engagement that has improved over the period of time. And then in the broader context of Pakistan's, I always say this 3E, economy, energy, and environment spectrum, what are different key enablers for privatization in Pakistan, and then policy recommendations and future directions. Obviously, the panel discussion would follow, and we would try to conclude this debate around privatization. So, well, starting from Pakistan's economic challenges, there have been a significant burden in terms of monetary terms, in terms of fiscal policy measures. The power sector and the inefficiencies there, they have been the major contributor in terms of Pakistan's economic challenge. I always say there is a triangle between Pakistan's economic woes, energy sector instabilities, and Pakistan's environmental and climate change vulnerability. So there is a significant financial strain in terms of circular debt, which is touching around 2.9 trillion rupees, inefficiencies in power sector around 500 billion rupees annually in terms of system losses and other losses. And then these implications, these concerns, they sort of delve into growing concerns regarding the financial instability, how we can sort of improve our infrastructure, the financial bottlenecks, and then these reflect on supply side, distribution side, and transmission side as well. So one of the things that is highlighted over here is that government's response to privatization is that we are seeing it as a solution so that we can decrease the inefficiencies in energy sector. And there is a renewed focus that we sort of control the inefficiencies, system losses, electricity theft, and obviously the bodies like IMF, they sort of recommending these reforms as well. In terms of what are different global examples of privatization available to us, there are success stories, particularly from Chile, from UK, that in early as 1980s in Chile, increased investments, improved efficiency, and reliable energy supplies. They were witnessed after the privatization in UK. The late 1990s privatization led to a significant reduction in power prices, increased efficiency, and new technological investment. So privatization, what it does is bring competition, bring innovation, bring creativity, so that more and more entities, they sort of compete with each other. And whenever there is a competition in the market and the market driven policies, consumers always win. So this is what theoretical economics or theoretics tells us. But there are challenges as well, mixed results as well. In Japanese case, the initial predictions of technological improvements were overshadowed by reduced efficiency due to regulatory challenges. So regulations are very important in this regard. A strong, comprehensive, facilitative sort of regulatory framework, which is facilitating these private entities and bringing competition to the market. That is very important. In India's case, in Odisha, post-privatization, electricity prices increased for rural consumers. Again, regulatory challenges, how we can sort of bring together a comprehensive regulatory framework. Again, the detailed examination of global cases also highlight different findings in terms of how we can sort of gauge the impact of market privatization, liberalization. In EU's example, where unbundling of generation, transmission, and distribution, efficiency improvements were witnessed, and price impacts across the member states were felt. Similarly, multiple studies they document that about 15% increase in efficiency after these reforms, innovative strategies, privatization and liberalization in EU electricity sector. Price effect varied about extended sort of percentage, but still a 15% increase in efficiency is important. So coming towards Pakistan, history of privatization in Pakistan, it begins with in 1980s. Initial steps towards privatization were taken in areas to growing domestic demand supply gap. HUBCO in 1991, the HUBCO Power Company was established as the first major private initiative. And then Privatization Commission was formed in 1991. To privatize these SOEs in power sector. Then comes the power policy of 1994. It enabled power sector to bring investments into Pakistan's power sector in IPP mode, generating about 3,050 megawatts at that time. In terms of regulatory developments, NEPRA formed in 1997. Formation in 1997, the electric was formed, regulate power sector and ensure consumer interests were protected, so that we can regulate, we can sort of provide these regulatory frameworks. WAPDA Amendment Act in 1998 led to creation of PEPCO and these unbundling of DISCOs, GENCOs, and NTDC in terms of transmission operator. And then we see that in 2005, K Electric is sort of privatized, marking a significant shift in power sector landscape. So why privatization in Pakistan? This is two graphs, two pies, showing that Pakistan's mix of Pakistani electricity consumers. You can clearly see that lifeline consumers are 4% of total consumers. Protected consumers who are consuming up to 200 units are 47%, and up to 300 units is 32%, which means that around 60% consumers are those consumers who are consuming less than 300 units per month, which is not good in terms of per capita consumption. And if you see the second graph, electricity consumption, it is in gigawatt hours. You can clearly see that about 50% consumption is coming from our residential consumers, which is unproductive consumption. So we need to increase the consumption. We need to utilize our power plants in a way that more productive demand is generated. This is the trend globally. If you compare Pakistan with China, you'll see that there is a contrary trend. 50% consumption in residential sector in Pakistan, whereas in China, 50% consumption comes from industrial consumers, which means that if you are generating electricity by consuming dollars, you are earning dollars instead. But in Pakistan, this is reverse, which is causing financial instabilities in Pakistan. Another phenomena, that is the Laffer curve of electricity. In Pakistan, as it is highly regulated market and prices are determined at national federal level through NEPRA, not the distribution companies, determine whenever electricity tariff increases. In first stage, you can see that the consumption or revenue of a distribution company or utility, they also increases. But this is a non-linear relationship. There would come, there would be a point after which this second stage will begin, which has already begun in Pakistan. That is, when you increase electricity tariff after this particular point, the revenues, the collection, the consumption start to drops because consumers simply cannot afford to pay for electricity bills. So this put a toll on distribution companies as well, because now वो कहते हैं कि जैसे जैसे प्राइस इंक्रीज होती जाती है, कंज्यूमर सवाब समझ के इलेक्ट्रिसिटी चोरी करना शुरू कर देते हैं. तो वी नीड टू ब्रिंग मोर innovative ideas, competition to the market, so that not only we are increasing the demand, we are generating productive demand, we are utilizing more and more power generation units, but also providing relief, innovation, creativity to the consumers and bringing more and more industrial consumers to the grid. So we do not understand this drive demand generation. All the focus is on supply side measures. So we need to take into account the utility, the effectiveness, how we can use price signals at distribution company level to generate demand, and use distribution companies more effectively, more innovatively. And lastly, the silos of power policies. Power policies, they are being developed in a silo, not a consultative discussion with industrial sector, with Ministry of Industries, Ministry of Commerce, Ministry of Environment. So we need to have this integrated sort of approach. Again, the SOE performance of Pakistan, you can clearly see that these are government-owned public entities in power sector of Pakistan. Only 5 companies, they are in surplus. Rest of the 17 companies, SOEs in power sector, they are generating huge amount of loss in terms of billions of rupees. Almost all the distribution companies, the Gencos, CPPA, PEPCO, all these are in loss. So there is a case for privatization, bringing corporate principles into Pakistan's electricity sector, particularly at distribution companies. This is the case study of K Electric. Pre-privatization state, initial setup of KESE. Monas Saab can elaborate it in detail as well. You can clearly see that if you see these 4 graphs, you can see that distribution infrastructure, it has increased by manifold. If you compare the performance from 2005 to 2023, power consumed in billion, it has also increased. Supply, it has also increased. The consumer base also increased from the levels of 2005 to 2023. And if you compare the post-privatization developments, you can clearly see that operational improvements and investment influx after the privatization is done in Pakistan in the K Electric case. These are some of the technical parameters of K Electric. One of the success story, I would say, the major development in terms of K Electric's privatization case was the decrease in transmission and distribution losses. If you see the graph since 2011, this orange bar is the transmission and distribution losses of K Electric, which has declined over the period of time. Whereas if you compare it with ex-WAPTA discos, you can see that they are persistent, they are stagnant. Since 2011, there has been no improvement. There are some improvement case, particularly in ISCO, FESCO, and GEPCO, but still, if you compare it with the privatization case, you can clearly see a significant improvement over transmission and distribution losses. Recovery ratios have also been improved, are stagnant around 80-85% in K Electric's case, due to and these are stable and improving. If you compare it with distribution companies, there is a difference between these 2 cases. So we need to sort of delve into details how we can bring more and more private entities in distribution business. Another thing that is that I personally believe that is one of the hallmark of privatization and bringing competition and improvement through private entities is introduction of digitalization and customer engagement, which is again the hallmark in the case of K Electric as well. You can clearly see the graph shows the number of consumers interacting through digital platforms at K Electric, which is exponentially increasing. In fiscal year 2020, about 149K consumers were interacting through these digital platforms, which has increased to 1.88 million people. What are different? So after studying these two cases, these circumstances, you can clearly see that there is a need to bring more and more private entities in the distribution business. What are different key enablers for privatization in Pakistan? Obviously, energy security and modernization. If public sector is continued to take care of the private sector, you will see that there would not be performance-based incentives. There would be pressures in terms of manpower, in terms of employees. So energy security and modernization can be done through privatization. Privatization as a strategic solution. There is a 3E crisis in Pakistan, particularly in terms of European Union's initiative of carbon border adjustment mechanism, which calls for renewable energy integration in the power sector of Pakistan. So privatization could be one strategic solution through this. Regulatory and strategic framework. This is obviously very, very vital for Pakistan's case. Policy recommendations and future directions. Well, we need to have regulatory framework development parallel to this privatization drive. We need regulators' role as a facilitator role so that more and more private entities could come into the business and provide and ensure transparency, protect consumers' interest, and promote fair competition. Encouraging competition and efficiency. There should be fair competition among the entities, reducing inefficiencies, reducing cost, phased privatization. This is a gradual process which should be dealt with trial and error method in the phases to allow time for assessment and adjustment, ensuring that each phase build on the success and lessons of the previous phase. In that way, we can gradually improve supporting sustainable development, green energy initiatives, incentives for innovations. Obviously, quality of service should be coupled with incentives so that there is more incentives for quality of services. And lastly, demand improvement, which is the dire need of the time that we need to generate more productive demand in the grid, addressing this excess capacity issue, green supply chain and CBAM compliance, again, increase market competition and effective wheeling reforms. As only private sector distribution company, K Electric, until 2024, K Electric's progress post-privatization support the case for expanding privatization to foster competitive, efficient improvements in servicing and pricing. Lastly, the wheeling challenge, wheeling charges, they should be decided with a consultative discussion with distribution companies, with industrial consumers, so that we can create this synergy between these two important stakeholders, and we can bring more and more competition through CTBCM reforms and wheeling reforms. Lastly, what are different future directions? We need to call to action that as the tariff is increasing, consumer demand is decreasing. We need to bring more and more innovative solutions. Maybe distribution companies, they should incentivize more and more sector coupling initiatives, such as bringing EVs, bringing electric appliances in the kitchen so that electricity demand can be generated, and industrial consumers can also be benefited through innovative tariff, through these reforms. But one of the things that we need to do is we need to generate productive demand. And I think that privatization, bringing competition, fair competition, and cost-reflective tariff this is the way forward for Pakistan if we want to bring more and more productive demand to the grid. Yep. Thank you so much for that. Back to you, Zainab.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Khalid, for explaining in detail the current issues and opportunities and identifying the enablers and providing us with some actionable policy recommendations. With this, we'll move forward. It's my pleasure to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. Syed Moannas Abdullah Alvi, the Chief Executive Officer of K Electric. Mr. Alvi's extensive experience and leadership in the power sector brings a unique perspective on the impact and implementation of privatization. With over 30 years of diverse experience in finance, Mr. Alvi has focused on driving operational efficiencies, financial planning, and capital restructuring. With this, I would request Mr. Syed Moannas Abdullah to share his keynote address. Over to you, sir.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. At the outset, I want to really appreciate and congratulate SDPI for the initiatives that they have undertaken, and Dr. Qasim, Dr. Khalid, Mr. Qasim, and Madam. These things are so important for even developed countries where they are aware of most of the challenges. But country like Pakistan, I think what you guys do here provides a lot of information, researches, which is used by the decision makers. And I'm sure, whatever you have written will be read and understood and taken into consideration when the government will decide on the future course of action. Obviously, we understand that because of a lot of lack in stability, these reports are not so well implemented. But it's a country of 240 million people, and we have resources. I'm sure you guys knows it better than us that we have a lot of resources. We can still feed our population. We have all 4 climates. We have deserts, mountains. We can develop tourism. So I'm very optimistic, and I'm sure institutions like you will help this country to foster the growth and the level where we should be, hopefully, inshallah, very soon. In terms of power sector, again, this is something which we have done for the last so many years, and we are confident and we are absolutely sure that privatization for power sector is the cornerstone of any sustainable solution that we can have in the energy chain. And God forbid, if Pakistan is going to have problems, which we already have some, they can be multiplied if these issues are not resolved. Dr. Khalid has talked about many things. I don't want to repeat those things, but the only thing I want to say here is that if we have to talk about K Electric before privatization was getting operational subsidy from government of Pakistan, which is not a subsidy to the citizens of Karachi or Pakistan, which was just to fund the operations of the company. The costs were so high that the tariff was not enough to fund those costs. And if you look at our financial statements, which has the historic data, you will see that a lot of amounts were given just to facilitate K Electric, which was KESC at that point in time, to manage its day-to-day operation, which was reduced to zero since 2005. And again, if you go, it's a listed company, so all the information is available in the public domain. So you can go and see that whether it was paid till 2004 and when it was not paid post that. You will still see a tariff differential subsidy. For all practical purposes and abundant clarity, this is a subsidy to the citizens of Karachi, not to K Electric. And it has reasons of fuel cost, which again is something we buy from the government of Pakistan. So at the end of the day, we buy expensive gas, and then we have to generate power, and the tariff has to be kept at a certain level, and the differential has to be paid to us as we provide subsidy to lower rates to the citizens, the customers that we have in Karachi. And uh, again, we can talk about in a lot detail what we have done to reduce that, and I can tell you it's humongous. It's a lot that has reduced the cost. Otherwise, probably the electricity would have generated at a much higher cost. So, the investments that have gone into K Electric since privatization is almost $4 billion. And again, I think Dr. Saab has highlighted, if you look at the capexes in other distribution companies, they are very little. We have reduced T&D losses. Uh, in fact, if you look at the last year's number, the disco's losses have increased by almost 2%. And ours has, they have not increased, but they have stayed where they are right now. And it is because of the fact that the tariff in the last 2 years have increased from almost an average of 19 rupees to 42 rupees, which is again a, a, a major concern for power sector, because the people, unfortunately, they don't have the money to pay. So while we want to do many things, but we have to reduce the cost of power also. And and there are initiatives which are being considered, where we want to convert the existing imported coal plants to local coal. We have resources of 100 years. We are not talking about increasing the carbon footprint. Let me be very, very clear to you. We are just talking about the already coal plants that are going to burn coal, but from import, to be replaced by coal that will come from Thar. Uh, I can tell you there is a lot of conversation, and SDPI can do a research on that also. It's a myth that the reserves in Thar cannot be burned, or it has a high lignite, or transportation is a problem. All these things are there, but the bottom line is that that coal can be used, and I'm sure that inshallah we will. KE Electric is also working on one of the project, which is Jamshoro, but the government is also fully aware and cognizant of the fact that we have to do this, and hopefully inshallah we will see uh, it done, and it will reduce cost. The Hydel initiative is increased. Hopefully, inshallah, we'll see more power plants on Hydel. For local coal and Hydel, there is no import requirement. So we will reduce the impact on the foreign currency availability. And Dr. Saab has raised a very important point, uh, that in terms of the overall power consumption by industry is much lower as compared to any other developed country. And inshallah, if Pakistan is able to foster growth, which will require more power consumption, I can tell you the rates can go down very quickly, because there's a lot of capacity cost which is being paid by the customers. Uh, there is again an analysis available that, if you split the power sector into the capacity and the energy cost, Pakistan energy cost is very comparative. I can assure you it is better than India. When we talk about the generation mix of this country, when we have uh, uh, coal plants, we have hydel, we have nuclear, we have wind, solar. Our energy cost, if we just for the time being forget about, very important point, forget about the capacity, our generation cost for the energy is probably close to 10 rupees. In India, it is higher. The problem is that we cannot utilize the plant. And again, Dr. Saab has talked about it. There are initiatives which are taken, and hopefully, inshallah, we'll see industry utilizing more power. Coming back to the privatization, which is again the subject today, uh, it will require a lot of effort from the government. It is going to be tough. Uh, it will require adjustments in terms of the way they operate. I'll just give you one example. When KE was privatized, uh, we had 18,500 people and 17,000 were non-managed. The biggest challenge was to fix this number. Today, we have around 12,000 people. We have 5,500 people management staff, and we have around 6,000 non-management. It took us a lot of time to fix it. It is a reality. Let me tell you, it is a reality that in 2005, we have more gardeners than engineers. And in all the discourse, I'm so sorry, but whenever they are going to fix it, they will have this problem. And when you have to fix it, you have to take decisions which are unpopular. But I think we have reached a level where the can has no place to be kicked to. We have reached a wall. We can't go further. So IMF has also put this as a condition, and we have seen government identifying 3 discos at least who they are taking a very aggressive target of next year, June or July probably. I think it is difficult, and but again, I think Dr. Saab has covered every subject, so I have to refer to his comment in terms of the regulations and the ability of the regulator to do things that will enable these companies to be privatized. Even in KE or in other discos, please try to understand that you are not selling a disco, you are selling a tariff. The tariff on the basis of which whoever is going to buy will make money or lose money. No one is going to do it for free. It is not a charitable business.
Yeah.
People, if they invest, they want to make money. So, you know, we have to have that mindset also. If that someone is making money, let him make money. Because if he will earn, he will further invest. So the concept of someone is making money is a crime. We have to let go of this concept. It is painful, it is very difficult to be sold, and when in an environment when we are targeting almost in the next few years, the numbers that have been given to IMF are $50 billion of FDI. Someone has to put in that money in this country. So uh, we have to be investor friendly, and whenever it is going to start, it will take some time. You will not be able to reap benefits quickly. I would say any significant uh, impact of privatization should be seen after 3 years. Yes, there are learnings, and we are talking to the ministry also. I was just talking to Dr. Saab before this conversation. I was saying that the government should find a strategic partner rather than a financial investor. But again, then you have to be friendly also. You have to, uh, the investor should have the confidence that whatever commitments will be made to the investor will be followed. There will be no change in the goalpost once you start the process. So uh, I think explaining privatization, why it is important, I think everyone is sold. I just want to give you one more example of what it has given K Electric. We have uh, advertised and requested people to provide us bids for solar. Uh, we have received those bids, and let me tell you, for 100 megawatt solar plant, we have been provided a bid of 3.88 cents. This is phenomenal, Alhamdulillah. Uh, uh, Again, the government also issued an RFQ earlier, and in spite of them initially giving a tariff, a reference tariff, and later on, uh, just they they just said that okay, there is no reference tariff. You provide a bid, but unfortunately, and because now people understand that it is not government's business to run businesses, so no bid was received. And in our case, for 150 megawatt, we received 15 bids. And inshallah, we are up, today, hopefully, we'll file the report with NAPRA, and very soon you will see awarding of that contract to the successful bidder. Uh, so why it happened? Because the developer has confidence on KE to meet his expectations. When we talk about this trilemma in power sector of affordability, reliability, and sustainability, I think the only way you'll be able to achieve is privatization. And uh, we can talk about free markets. Obviously, ultimately, it should happen, but probably the road is a bit farther, I would say, at this stage. Uh, all these things are under discussion, whether it is, uh, the wheeling charge, whether it is more discos. We are referred Indian case, of uh, Tata in Delhi. There is a comparison why they have done well, and in Pakistan probably the challenges are there. Karachi, uh, fifth largest city probably in the world, but on the livability index, it is probably the second last. Very difficult. This is a World Bank report. I'm sure you guys must have seen it. Uh, 40% of Karachi is, it's Kachi Abadi, which is undocumented. So, what we have achieved successfully is managing a very difficult area of Pakistan, which probably would have been much difficult for the government to fix if it would not have been privatized. We have talked about the circular debt. We have talked about losses. I can assure you, KE contribution to circular debt is zero. And I'm happy to talk about it as long as anyone wants to. This has been agreed by ministry also, that KE has no contribution to the circular debt. So if somehow we are able to privatize all the discos, is it not a foregone conclusion that the circular debt would limit to zero if the privatized entities has no bearing on the circular? And why? Because we are given a tariff. The tariff allows us certain losses. If we do good, the benefits of surpassing what is allowed, there is a sharing mechanism. It will again not be retained entirely by us. If we are unable to achieve it, there is no sharing. We have to bear it. So if there is a downside, we have to pay. If there is upside, it has to be shared. And I don't disagree with this. This is absolutely right. Because at the end of the day, we have to charge a tariff which people have to pay. So if we have improved more, which was not anticipated, the people, the citizens of this country should get benefit. It's not that the investor takes all the benefit. So we don't disagree with this. The issue is that we are slow in taking decisions as a country. And again, as I said, the can has no further space to be kicked to. So I'm sure and confident that these decisions will be taken and privatization will happen. The lessons learned would be, uh, the regulations have to be friendly. Uh, the predictability has to be there. Uh, we, SK Electric, has filed an investment plan with the regulator for the next 7 years of almost $2 billion. It will require localization. If, for example, inshallah, if you can privatize the entire sector, this amount can go into billions of dollars. To SKE's share, it can be 15, it can be 20. So just imagine that you will have predictable demand of this magnitude for the next so many years. You can develop local industry. We are talking to people. We have done conferences of made in Pakistan. We are telling investors that we are going to buy this for the next 7 years. We are importing. House of Habib has developed few products, and I'm sure the others are going to follow suit. So if government was in a position to run businesses successfully, and the few companies which are making profits are, I would say, PSO and OGDC, which you can't go wrong in them. Again, I think the chances of increasing their profitability by doing operational excellence projects, by probably right sizing many things, the profits can go actually high. We are actually having I would say, lack of profitability. There's still profitability, but the profitability can be increased. But if government was in a position, and this is not something which they don't disagree today, is in a position to run businesses, then PIA should have been a much better institution. Steel mill should have been running. Iran, with the same technology, has probably increased the uh, steel mill by maybe 3 or 4 times. I don't know exactly, but they have actually running and increased the capacity. Railway, you can see how our railway is operating. So it's a foregone conclusion that privatization is the way forward. I think everyone is convinced, and we are working with government. Inshallah, we'll be able to give them what our learnings are, and we are also sure that whoever is going to buy any distribution company in Pakistan, at least, they would definitely keep KE as their partner, and we would be willing to provide any technical support for a local or an international investor. And hopefully, inshallah, you will see us on that canvas of privatization. So again, Dr. Saab and Pastor Saab and Madam, thank you very much for inviting us to this very important subject, which will pave way for a better Pakistan. Thank you very much. Pakistan Zindabad.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ali, for an insightful keynote address. You rightly mentioned that privatization of Pakistan's power sector is the cornerstone for sustainability. With this, as Mr. Alvi has to leave early, I would request Mr. Qasim to present his shield on behalf of STPI. Secondly, I would request the speakers to please come forward for a picture with the report. And after that, I'll be coming towards our online participants, our online panelists for the discussion. Thank you.
Sorry. एक पिक्चर पैनलिस्ट के साथ वो उसके बाद
Sir,
अच्छा रिपोर्ट सर Thank you so much. बात करेंगे और कौन सी चीजें हम ये प्रोग्राम सकते हैं सही ना प्लीज
okay, so okay, so now we're moving towards our panel discussion. I'm pleased to introduce one of our esteemed panelists, Ms. Amina Sohail. Ms. Amina Sohail is the former legal advisor, National Electric Power Regulatory Authority. Ms. Meena, are you here?
Ji, assalamu alaikum. Yes, I'm available. Please.
Okay. So Ms. Amina, my question to you is, what are the key legal and regulatory challenges that need to be addressed for a successful privatization of power utility sector? And how can we ensure that the regulatory framework remains robust and adaptable to the future changes and addressing the challenges?
Thank you very much for inviting me over. we have very comprehensively just learned about how privatization has been a success in the case of K Electric, though it has been really a learning curve in the sense that this process went on for quite some time, and it was a performance-based tariff initially, and there were certain changes that were made in the tariffs, and then the privatization also happened twice in the case of K Electric, because the initial financiers who had purchased K Electric didn't continue. It was later on another buyout by certain other strategic investors. So, but nonetheless, what we can say that all is well if ends well, and the outcome of the privatization has been in a way successful. Now, as far as the role of NEPRA is considered, K Electric was a success because Pakistan at that point in time, back in 2003-04, when the K Electric privatization started, was able to come up with a performance-based tariff, and it was first of its kind in the region as well. And it really helped K Electric to run itself away from the model at which other distribution companies was working. So to say that NEPRA, a regulatory system, is important for the case of privatization, you see, privatization is mainly led by the policy of the government. NEPRA is a regulatory regime, and if there is a policy which comes up and say that, hey, NEPRA, you need to do this, NEPRA would be bound to do that. And this exactly what happened at the time of K Electric, and due support and efforts were exerted on the K Electric privatization. There were as many as 3-4 tariff determinations squarely done for K Electric just to make it a success. However, we do find that there were problems in the contract of privatization. So I think more to say about privatization, about the regulator, it's more important to seek how the privatization is being undertaken. What is the agreement that the government is going to undertake with the entity that is going to take over the assets? One. Second, we have seen that our privatizations occur in utter hurry and rush. The assets are not evaluated properly. So what we need to really do is to take our stock, a review of the stock that are available for offloading. One. Second, post 2018, there have been tremendous developments on the legal side or the regulatory side in the power sector. Government, unfortunately, has not really given much attention to those regulatory and legal changes in the power sector. And it is primarily because of that the power sector is not producing the kind of performance improvement that it should have been displaying despite increased electricity prices. It's because the market is not pushing in. So if you're going to privatize your concerns, you got to give them an environment where they can compete with each other. K Electric is working because it is an integrated utility. It is sort of an island, and it is operating in that island. The case of distribution companies would be very much different. I can't really say it would be difficult, but it would be definitely different from K Electric, because these distribution companies have never been able to operate separately from WAPDA. One, though they have been companies for quite some time. They were incorporated back in 98. They were licensed in 2001-2, but they have never been working independently. They have CEOs, they have CFOs. So I think for privatization, it's the government who should be put to task to put its own house in order, to put its privatization policy with respect to power entities in a more transparent manner, and then to demand whatever it wants to demand from the regulator. Because regulator by law is bound to abide by the government policy. So here, I would disagree with some of the earlier observation of your researcher on the subject, that due definitely in whatever way the government asks and seeks regulator support, that should and would be provided because if they are supposed to work under the law. So the problem lies where the government fails to do its job properly. There are requirements under the 2018 amendment law that now the wire business is being separated from the supplier business. Government has not come up with any policy on that. So these distribution companies should not be sold as they are working at the moment. There is a silver lining if they could be divided into different lots as it has been experimented in our neighboring country, India. So I think instead of giving examples of other jurisdictions, which could be, of course, why not? But I think more realistic examples could be from our neighboring country, because they have also taken the same trajectory of development in the power sector in terms of unbundling, regulatory. In fact, they have more constraints because they have provincial regulators as well. And then there is the central regulator in India. So I think we can learn from them, and instead of offloading our distribution companies per se, we may experiment some of our wire business held on to by these distribution companies as one part of the business, and that would be quite easy, right? That would be like any career of power, and they won't have much of the liabilities. In fact, they'll be the main companies who will be having the assets with them, and that would be another way to financially model these entities. And then the electric supply business can be offloaded in another transparent bidding process, because people then can come up with some experience in, of course, not many people have experience in the retail business, but you can attract international experience in this area. And I think this is something which I haven't heard anywhere debating on this aspect. So I would leave the audience and your team who is researching on this subject to please look into these aspects as to how differently we can privatize our distribution assets in light of the last changes that were made in the NEPRA Act. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Amina, for sharing your perspectives and insights. With this, we're moving forward, and I'm pleased to introduce one of our esteemed panelists, Mr. Ali Khizr. Mr. Ali is the head of the research at Business Recorder. We are eager to hear your perspective, Mr. Ali, on the privatization of power sector affecting market dynamics and competition in Pakistan, and how do you foresee this privatization?
Thank you for having me on this webinar. And as Mona said, that the proof is in the pudding, and it's being demonstrated by the performance of the K Electric, how the privatization has helped the company. Has shown you some data points which are here to ponder upon this. That there's no addition of circular from the K Electric side. And so had the other discos been privatized, so the circular reduction could have been achieved much earlier than what we're trying to do even today. And then about the quality of the human resource and in terms of development and all that. So in the power sector is a very dynamic, sector in Pakistan, and you need to see it more from a holistically energy perspective as well. I mean, the whole energy chain has to be seen in that respect, not the power sector, especially the way the world is moving. And you see the electrification of the vehicles and all that. And recently, I was positively surprised to see the K Electric people in the launch of the BYD. The brand launch of the BYD in Lahore. So when I asked them, why you guys are here, so they said that who's to benefit more, from ICE car launch, the oil marketing companies or the car. Of course, oil marketing companies, they're gonna have more business to do when these cars are launched. So K Electric has really pushed. They're really going to move forward in terms of the new avenues being added into this sector, and that's something we need to see from the other segments as well. So the overall, the electrification, the increase in the consumption of the electricity in the overall energy pie, and to ensure the availability, you need to have a proper planning, strategic vision, and execution of that planning and all that. One other element which you must have seen recently is about the competitive bidding in the renewable energy by the K Electric. So this is the first one in Pakistan where you do the competitive bidding, and the tariff come as low as 4 cents, and even below them 4 cents. I mean, this kind of things are unheard of Pakistan. It's heartening to see that those are happening here now. And nothing is more difficult in Pakistan. No sector, no city is more complicated in Pakistan than Karachi, as per see, in terms of the presence of all the demographies, and on all the geographies of Pakistan. The people are present there, and the law and order situation historically has remained very tight and very fluid in Karachi. And in such a scenario, managing to lower the losses over there is a remarkable job in that, and then using the technology and all that. And so that's something very, very, very heartening to see that, and we need this to happen in other areas as well. I mean, and if you see in the Pakistan, the sole focus in the power sector has been in the capacity addition and all that. And because of that, your capacity payments have become a big problem, because we didn't adequately invest in the transmission and distribution infrastructure. We didn't think about how to generate demand for the new power plants coming online. So that's there because the commercial side of the distribution businesses lacks incentive, and those discos, they don't really look beyond what the kind of a customer they're catering to and the kind of business that they have. They don't look beyond that, but K Electric does that, and they work on that, and they add the power only when there is a demand, and that's how it should happen in the rest of the country as well. And that is the first step towards the competitive market, as Monas rightly pointed out, that we are still far away from that competitive market, bilateral market over there. But we need to start up on taking baby steps on the direct billing and that. I'll just give you a few examples in that. In the K Electric, when an industrial guy comes for connection in K Electric, the K Electric provides them all the infrastructure and ensure that they have uninterrupted supply of power. But in return, they ask for a certain level of consumption and the charge on that. But in terms of the other discourse, whether you Lesco, Fesco, Hesco, or Mapco, even the better one, the Fesco, Lesco, ISCO, and Mapco, they keep on adding the new connections, and the old connections remain there as well. And they have their own captive generation from A, B, C factors, and they only come to the grid when they need the grid. And that complicates the problem. When you really need them to come to the grid, they don't come to the grid. But you don't need them to come to the grid at the peak load, they come to the grid. So that kind of a problems can be solved by bilateral solutions between the power distribution company and the bulk consumers over there, and that's where the K Electric has done that, and the customer care service of K Electric is so better in terms of dealing with the in terms of using their apps, in terms of using their service center and all that, which is unheard of on that. I mean, living in Lesco area, you don't have any such consumer service. You don't have any application or on your phone to see about your bills and other your consumption and all that. Where the K Electric, you can see that the consumer experience is so better in that way, and it's whether it's a retail consumer, whether it's an industrial consumer and all that. But you turn out to reduce so many losses into that. You come up to have new consumers and a more sustainable consumer from the both sides. And the reliability of the electricity has improved in Karachi over the period of time as well. And there's still very difficult areas to deal with, and they're dealing with it. in terms of that. The human resource has refined and has improved a lot versus what it used to be. So we need that kind of movement and other discourse as well. I mean, there are countries in the world where the public entities or the public sector entities have worked and have performed well, but they have a very different dynamics. In terms of Pakistan, we've seen the dynamics, we've seen the demise of the PIA steel mills and many other companies, and we've seen the whole power structure going down the hole, and with its weight, it's challenging the macroeconomic stability in the medium to long term, and which is already very fragile in the short to medium term. And that's why the reducing the weight of the power sector on the macroeconomic pillars is by shifting that weight to the private hands and let them grow, and then they build the foundation and have an independent movement on that. So I see the privatization is very important for strategic reasons and all that. And to think about it, the company needs to think about the next 5 years, next 10 years. That's what K Electric is doing. If you see their vision on in terms of their plans, where the multi-year tariff approval are still awaited, and at some point they made a plan up to 2029 where they've added the renewables A, B, C, D, and everything, and they thought about everything, and they're putting on it and working on it. I don't see that's happening in other discourse. If they have came up with the plan, it's just an exercise, to do that, and no one is to really own that plant. And tomorrow that there's some change in the government, some change with the secretary, some change with the minister, the whole regime to change, and they think in a very different way, and they come up with the new stuff and all that. So that should not happen. They should be apolitical. They should be commercial. They should be strategic. And that's why the entities to be in the private hand is of an utmost importance. So to reduce losses, to improve the efficiencies, to have overall better experience of the consumer, to attract new consumer, to electrification of the segments such as EV and all that. For all that, having a private entity is better than living in the current model of state-owned business. Here I stop and will take question if you have.
Thank you, Mr. Khidr, for sharing your insights on dynamics of privatization of power sector utilities. Thank you. With this, I would like to move towards our third panelist, Mr. Asad Mahmood. Mr. Asad is the principal consultant at Erzakil and a renewable or energy efficiency expert. Sir, my question to you is, in what ways can privatization drive energy efficiency and innovation within the energy sector?
Thank you very much. I think we have got very important points by our earlier speakers and Monis Saab himself as well. But we need to learn from the previous journeys in terms of privatization in the power sector as well. So by virtue of energy efficiency, as specifically you have asked, when we take the distribution companies' businesses, so their benefit is in selling more electricity. So if you have a private company that has a dedicated energy conservation cell established within their domain, so it is something where you need one gets astonished at why they have this department, because their ultimate aim is to sell more and get more revenue, and on the other side they have their energy conservation cell department, and that is where the K Electric stands out in respect of all other distribution companies in the public domain. And this is what I was once taken up for an interview at director's position in K Electric, and this is the question which was asked, why you are going to come into a distribution company and how you are going to justify this with the rationale that energy efficiency is something which is important for the K Electric for its consumer, and what services could be given. So I think while we go towards privatization, the other thing is we need to come from business as usual scenarios, as unbundling or independent power operations are coming into place. So we need to also see what technologies or what new services can the distribution companies can add on to their just routine businesses of selling the electricity, and that would be their survival for their businesses to sustain in the longer term in terms of other value-added services, be in the form of appliances or major technologies, retrofitting programs and things like that. And secondly, like as Ms. Amina Sohail mentioned, that we need to like go into lot-wise privatization, just to see not only the stock taking of the assets, but also the stock taking and due diligence of the available data within those distribution companies. For example, again, one of the best practices which I can attribute towards K Electric, while was being in the public sector once, like was trying to see how many industries are there in Pakistan and how much realistic data, not only industries, like industrial subclassification, like if you have textile, how many of them are spinning, integrated weaving, things like that. So during that exercise, like although there was or there is the standard industrial classification code of from the time of ABDA, but the data in the way it was used, it was supposed to be entered to get that sort of granular data. Even in the energy yearbooks, even in the state of the industry report, you have the only major classification as industry, but no segregation in beneath it, that what industrial sector it is attributing to, and how frequently the data is being updated regarding the customer profiling, so it can reflect towards your economy. And when we talk about economy, it comes through the Pakistan Bureau of Statistics industrial classification codes, the statistics they issue in terms of the business activities running on. So I found like K Electric data most updated one, having like this the classification code for every nature of consumer which is connected to their grid. And that is something again, like which once like the privatization of the companies take place at any stage, from any section, this is something we need to look at. And that is something that is the role model for the other distribution companies, because if you cannot manage, you cannot measure. So this is something we need to have, like the growth trends of different industries, whether which sector is which industry is growing, which is shrinking. So subsectoral classification, granular level view is something very much important, and accuracy, it can come if we combine like all those things, rules of businesses, and bringing them on the same page. So cutting the long story short, Zainab, like when we talk about distribution companies, we take it as a service sector. And for the service sector, the customer relationship management is the key for its survival. And be it be privatized, be it be public sector, any sector, any organization which deals with the customers, and respond to them, even they are, regardless of whatsoever the price of electricity is, whatsoever the load shedding frequency is, but even if you respond to the people, they feel satisfied, at least to the extent that you are listening to them, you are guiding them. So this is another area where like they have done, like in terms of privatization, that has been the part. Because again, from one of the experiences I had, my number used to come on all the electricity consuming utility bills at the back end, in terms of when we started off while being in NICA, the energy labeling regime. So that number, there was one number. So people used to call around, and ultimately that number was switched to my mobile as well, landline. So I used to get the calls from many frustrated people, like nobody is picking the call. And that's the normal hue and cry within the public sector domain distribution companies, complaint resolution management. So when I used to like take the call and at least try listen to them and divert to the relevant portion, so that was something like where like that one positive step, it's not one person, it's the families behind them, your like the people which can defend you, that no, like definitely there might be some discrepancies, weaknesses, but there are certain departments which also listen and guide the people in an accurate manner. So this is how but it all comes to then again delegation of powers within the private sector, and that what we can see in K Electric, but not in the public sector distribution companies. Everything turns around to like senior most management, or even the decisions are taken at the ministry level, not even at the CEO level for every small decision. So this delegation is something which is also like could be seen in the privatization sector. And then I'll just sum up on my discussion on the point that when you go for privatization, so privatization like without competition, that is something we need to aim at. Otherwise, like a fair competition and transparent one with enabling environment, which every speaker has just mentioned. And definitely, like there is a room for improvement for every entity, be it in the private sector, be it in the public sector, that you need to not only satisfy now the local clients, the distribution companies also have to work out. And Dr. Waleed has been mentioning about CBAM, but like if our distribution companies are not having their emission factors published yet, so like the international compliance requirements under Article 4 of the Paris Agreement, you're negating that. So this is that again another feather in the cap of K Electric that they have worked out on their GHG inventory as well, that which can like help them or their connected consumers to at least use their localized emission factors rather than just relying on the published emission factors by international research organizations. So again, it's like from that ambit, other private sector companies can look into it, even CPPA, and that they can also look into publishing their monthly power emission factors, so that this issue of having different random emission factors by different industries and different set of consumers in Pakistan. So harmonization of data could only be brought in, and that is something where best practices has been established by like KE, and definitely like digitalization and all those aspects have been discussed. But as there is no space left for kicking the can further ahead, I just close that discussion that we need not to now. The only option left is now to crush the can. So the better decisions have to be taken by the government, and follow the best practices which have been set by which we already have, learning by the experiences by them in the shape of KE and their young professionals and their teams, which are working hard to sort of not only satisfy the local consumers because and also like rebranding and giving a sort of hope to the end users and customers that keeping themselves updated whatsoever is happening, even with the tariff raise. So I'll like just like going to last summing up, even with the every escalation in the tariff rates, like the public sector distribution companies don't come up like with the rationale why it happened. But so ultimately that is something like the government policies come into play, and those consumers which are connected with the private sector, which is running efficiently, but sometimes things are not in their domain, and they are like brought into the limelight that it is like if they are the culprits, but it's not the case. It's like the government policies which overshadows or give that sort of bad image to the people who are working, investing their resources to build their good image. So we need to also, that responsibility and onus also lies on the government platform and entities to be efficient and to also give clear line of action to the end users and consumers and industries if you really want your demand to trigger. So I'll just stop over there.
Thank you, Satsa, for sharing your detailed perspective and insights. With this, I'll be going towards our last panelist for the discussion, Ms. Salina Irfan. Ms. Salina Irfan is the energy expert and advisor at STPI. Ma'am, my question to you is how privatization can support low carbon development in Pakistan? So after that, we're going to have a brief Q&A session.
Okay, so I'm going to sort of bring this debate around to answer this question. Firstly, starting from Dr. Khalid Waleed's reference to the UK and the EU and around the world, how privatization has been done. First of all, privatization means competition. It means a free market. And no offense to KE, it has taken its time. It has taken, a 2015 amendment in their contracts and 2 ownerships and lots of chaos and a multi-year tariff, 10-year multi-year tariff to get them there. But we have to look at a utility from a consumer's perspective, first of all. Utility is a service provider, and it has to look at So when we look at efficiency, we look at all other factors. We have to look at it from a service providers, as a service provider for a consumer. So privatization should mean a free market, which means it should mean competition. Having said that, this is the second time that IMF has brought the privatization of the power sector on the table. In 2014's IMF program, this was already brought to a table where a program was made under DPC, where a 2015 market rules were applied. A CPPAG was set up to become the financial sort of exchange and to bring transparency across the financial sector. Based on that, a 2018 amendment to the NEPRA laws was brought, where the distributed generation clause was brought in and the lots was brought in. Based on that, a program was developed where MEPCO, ISCO, FESCO, and LESCO were divided into different zones for their different privatization, again, based on what Ms. Amina was talking about, keeping the assets divided based on the fact that we didn't get any investors because of our circular debt and high books debt restructuring, right? So we're going around in circles around the same debate. The plan is there. We just have to take it out of the books and start implementing it, right? This plan was again studied through the UK privatization model. We've seen it in our own telecom at one point in the 90s. We saw it. And that was also based on the UK privatization 80s railway telecom structure in the 90s, which has led to 22 service providers. Now, one main thing that it did require was removing the regional monopolization of monopolies, allowing consumer from Islamabad to approach KE if he wants electricity from them. That was one. Turning CPPAG into a financial exchange, where whatever we need from the IPPs we buy and let the IPPs sell, let the private discourse buy from the IPPs, look at backward efficiency. Because you're controlling the cost, because you're controlling the price of electricity at initially, obviously the government cannot let go. NTDC remains in the structure, the pool remains in the structure of the government. You will then be looking at quality of service first, which the privatized distribution companies will be fighting over. Second, they will fight over reduction of cost, which you saw in the telecom, which means technology, which means efficiency, which means forcing all the businesses to go towards adopting not just efficiency, but renewable efficient measures, low cost generation, right? It will also force NEPRA to go into what we have been forcing, competitive tariff for renewables. All of these structures sort of kind of come around through that entire structure. And so we don't have to go into fighting and legal amendments with K Electric. We're automatically setting up a privatized competitive market, which is forcing the entire market to go towards that sort of model. And now comes my part. When we're looking at low carbon emissions, it is again, as soon as you move towards low cost generation, you're automatically moving towards renewables, which means you're automatically moving towards a low carbon emissions model, right? So the low carbon pathway is again based on your privatization model. How you do this privatization, how you lay it out, how you plan this privatization is very important now. We don't have time. I mean, even for your NDCs, your low carbon commitments, your commitments that you have made to renewable 60%, all of this is important now. There is no other way for Pakistan to go. And that is the future of the economic development of Pakistan, because that is the way for all of us to meet our SDGs. It is the only way for us to meet our goals. It is the only way for us to meet our low carbon pathways. It is also the way for our climate resilience. We also have a north to south difference. which it has to be capitalized. You have a southern wind corridor, you have a northern hydel power, and that is where we have to capitalize instead of playing it to the pool also, right? Because we don't have the money for the transmission generation, we also have to look at off-grid solutions now for businesses. And all of this falls under forcing the generation companies, forcing your private sector to go towards these solutions. I think that would be my sum up.
Thank you so much, Ms. Selina, for explaining the privatization and different dynamics of it. As we're running behind schedule, so we'll just we'll take just 2 or 3 questions. So please raise your hands, or I'll be taking an online question as well. So I would also request participants to please ask the questions briefly, and the panelists to give a brief answer so we don't get too late.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you. And I apologize because I missed part of the presentation, and maybe my answer to my question was maybe in that. But if that is the case, you can just leave it. The thing is that, yeah, I listen, and there's nothing to disagree about whatever has been said, whatever I listen. उसके साथ ही मैंने वो KE का एक मिदाहनामा भी सुना अच्छा खासा, लेकिन it's not all so rosy. There are some things that need to be questioned there as well. So that's my question. Wind corridor, the lady in the end, she mentioned about the wind corridor. When was it discovered? How long it took for KE to get the dispatch from that? And a related question, I was CEO of Rajasthan Energy, and I think it's 4 years, more than 4 or 5 years. KE is trying to put a line to Windsor, to connect that, and there are 3 renewable projects, 50 megawatts each, I think. What is happening there? Why not we take these renewable as priorities? Why we are bent upon using the same Port Qasim, going for the renewal of the same licenses? That is my question. Thank you.
Ms. Selina, would you like to answer this?
So the wind corridor was discovered during a, I think it was a 2007 SCAP did sort of a study to identify renewables in Pakistan. Since then, we've done a small updation in 2012, but we haven't done a post-climate, post-floods updation. As to your question, it is a very pertinent question. I think everybody asks this question everywhere I go. The problem is that the transmission lines, let's be real, are expensive. And right now it is the government's business to put those transmission lines. The government doesn't have money for it. First of all. Second of all, the evacuation from these, we call them variable renewable energies because there is a variation to them. They're not stable. There will be a peak period between all your variable renewable energies, and it will start falling and rising, right? The evacuation stability to the grid is not confirmed. Okay, we've done studies, we've had studies 2014, and then we did one study in 2017, if I'm not wrong. If anyone from the ministry is there, they can correct me. And we found that the evacuation is not, there is no evacuation stability to our grid system. We already have, we already know the capacity payment issue. We have a generation capacity installed of about 45 plus megawatt. Our transmission is already for the installed capacity. We already don't have the transmission lines available, right? We cannot transmit after a certain point. Now, the way to do that is कि जहाँ पे आपका wind corridor है, and you're right, Jhimpir को 5 से 6 साल लगे थे to be connected. And अभी मिटियारी line जो priority पे है, वो इसीलिए है to bring it up. It is on priority of the government. लेकिन at the same time, जहां पे अब आपके renewables हैं, we've also seen कि IGCEP में renewables को पीछे ले लिया गया है, ठीक है? For the reason we don't have the money to bring them onto the transmission lines. The way to do this is, again, like I said, for low carbon emissions, the way forward is to bring distributed generation off grid solutions. And the way to do that is decarbonization. आपके businesses को अब decarbonization net zero का सोचना पड़ेगा, because as Dr. Khalid also mentioned, you are now part of the CBAM. और CBAM में हर business जो export करने जा रहा है उसको laws follow करने पड़ेंगे cross border के. उन क्रॉस बॉर्डर लॉज में आपको सर्टेन इमिशंस के आपका जो बिजनेस होगा उसकी इमिशंस जो है वो आपके टैरिफ में ऐड होती जाएंगी, आप पे पेनलाइजेशंस लगती जाएंगी एज ऑफ 2026 इफ आई एम नॉट रॉन्ग डॉक्टर खालिद, राइट? 2026 फूड एंड टेक्सटाइल विल बी 2026, कुछ अभी तक 2025 में स्टार्ट हो चुके हैं, राइट? और बाकी 2030 में स्टार्ट हो जाएगा. नाउ that you are already competing against countries like Bangladesh and Vietnam and other countries जहाँ पे electricity cost already competitive है उनके लिए. हम already industries suffer कर रही हैं. I think yesterday I read 10 industries have shut down in Pakistan. We already saw huge industry 10 years ago move to Bangladesh and other countries in textile because of the competitive pricing. We have to give that competitive pricing. And Mona Saab was right. Most of that is capacity payments, right? And the way forward for that was कि आप एक energy exchange बनाएं जहां आपके पास the government was supposed to have by 2024 have this card to play कि भाई there is an energy exchange, whatever we are not buying, sell it to the exchange. We didn't play that roadmap right. 2015 का मार्केट रूल्स का रोड मैप अगर अभी प्लेस में होता तो हम IPPs के साथ एक कार्ड लेके बैठे होते कि whatever we are not buying, sell it. You're not losing out on money. Had we played that right, but 2018 में आपने वो पूरा प्लान स्टॉप कर दिया जो मूव कर रहा था, राइट? क्योंकि ECC से एक रोड मैप पूरा अप्रूव हुआ था उस वक्त, ठीक है? Now coming back to this, for this the solution then is कि decarbonization की तरफ हर industry को जाना पड़ेगा. Every industry will have to look at decarbonization solutions and we will have to look at off-grid solutions जहाँ पे आपकी already renewable available है, wind corridor है, solar है, hydel है, and we're also looking into blue and green hydrogen where it is available. जहाँ पे availability है renewable की, वहीं पे आप उसके अराउंड आप अपनी कम्युनिटीज, उसके अराउंड आप अपने टैरिफ स्ट्रक्चर्स खड़े करें जहां पे बिजनेस है उससे क्रॉस सब्सिडाइज कराए कम्युनिटीज, रूरल कम्युनिटीज को. वहीं पे डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सिस्टम्स, इनको डिस्ट्रीब्यूटेड जनरेशन सिस्टम्स कहते हैं. यूके ने ये सिस्टम रिन्यूएबल को करने के लिए 2015 में स्टार्ट किया था, राइट? And now 22 companies like Octopus and all are all EDF. ये सब अब distributed generation models पे ही चल रहे हैं in their areas. I mean, Royal Victoria, I'm not sure if you all heard during the 2012 Olympics, Emirates cables जो थी, इन्होंने launch की थी. वो Emirates cables पूरी की पूरी जो है वो renewable structure पे चलती हैं.
Miss Selena, in the interest of time, actually would like to take at least 2 more questions.
Sure.
Okay. As we have been joined by DG Transmission Lines PPIB, Mr. Amir Adil. Adil sir, do you have any questions or any perspectives to add?
Yes, thank you so much. I would just like to briefly comment on few topics that have been discussed during this discussion. Let me start with the topic of privatization of DISCOs. So I would just like to inform you that the government is right now considering the privatization of DISCOs, as it has been considering since long, but there are many issues. The priorities of the government are obviously different, and they have to take care of the people who are unable to purchase power and things like that. So it's a generally accepted concept that the privatization process, initially, it usually enhances prices till the time the market becomes competitive and the prices become affordable. So we have talked about sustainability and reliability of the system. So it comes at a cost. It's not something that we can easily follow. So we have to overcome many challenges. Then we reach the stage of reliability, because still countries like Pakistan, they still think that do we have to provide more access to more people, or we have to consider load shedding considering the economic constraints. So these are discussions that keep on circulating among the government circles and the consultants we engage with. Secondly, I would just also like to, Madam just mention about government putting renewables somewhere at the backside. It's not a fact. In fact, the IGSEP regime, so this model, it uses software, black source, which takes into account various aspects, and then whatever it suggests to be put up as a new generation facility is recommended. In fact, the government laid emphasis on renewables and requested NEPRA to consider allowing more renewables, especially the solar, into the system. As regards the liberalization of market, so there are various factors that the government is considering. As you are all aware that the wheeling charges and the wheeling policy, it's under discussion, and that third-party access would be required to allow other generators to provide or supply the electricity to different load centers. So what I would say that we have been in a transition period for last many years. It has been slow. It has not been something that we should feel proud of, but the government priority is obviously considering the purchasing power of our people, especially if you consider the concept in Pakistan, due to certain reasons, of course, the government is also responsible for, is that the overall pattern of our consumption, as it was discussed in the presentation, that we have more of domestic consumers and less of industrial consumers. Non-recovery is another issue. So if you see the developed models, there's more emphasis on industrial or commercial uses and who bear the cost actually, and which is used to offset the burden on the domestic consumers. So there are many things going on. I would appreciate SDPI for this effort. And of course, we need to put the system into place piece by piece. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Adil sir. Please. Okay, this will be the last question.
Can I also have just one small
Okay, please be brief.
जो चीज मेरा ख्याल है डिस्कस नहीं हुई आप लोगों ने करनी है वो ये है कि आगे जाते हुए अगर से बेचना है तो क्या हमने अपना डाटा एक हाउस में रख लिया है कि जो इसको भी आप क्वालिफाई करें वो आके उस डाटा को देख ले। ये मैं अपना एक्सपीरियंस बता रहा हूँ। आई हैव बीन विद एन आईपीपी एंड आई हैव सोल्ड आउट। ठीक, तो सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट चीज जो कि पैटर्न कमीशन में होनी है, अगर हो रही है तो कंफर्ट दे दीजिए, अगर नहीं हो रही आप समझते करनी है तो आप कर लीजिए, अगर कोई इसमें आपको फैसिलिटेशन चाहिए होगी तो आते रहें। तो एक पहली चीज सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट ये है कि डाटा की बात तो हमने की, लेकिन डाटा की बात उसकी वैलिडेशन सेल के पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू से कुछ और होती है। जो बंदा आता है बिडर पोटेंशियल, वो उसको और तरह से देखता है, वो हर एक चीज देखता है, वो हर एक चीज पहले से मौजूद हो तो वो बिकने में ट्रांसपेरेंसी भी आ जाएगी, टाइम डिले भी कम होंगे और गोल सेट करना भी आसान है। दूसरी चीज ये है कि इसी सेल मॉडल में इसी पॉइंट ऑफ टाइम में किसी को सजेस्ट करना है कि आगे के गोल उनके क्या होने हैं। दो गोल्स, एक कॉस्ट रिडक्शन और दूसरा परफॉर्मेंस इंप्रूवमेंट और तीसरा एक्सटेंशन। ये चीजें पहले से बिडिंग स्टेज में जब तक पहले से नहीं करेंगे तो 4 पार्टी हम बैठ जाए 6 दफा कंसल्टेंट मांगा, ये सब डाटा खुद ब खुद फीड इन हो सकता है विदाउट एनी कंसल्टेंट। तो उस पर फोकस कर ले नेक्स्ट कि अब हमने आपने एसडीपीआई ने इसमें फैसिलिटेट कैसे करना है। अगर आप चाहेंगे तो आई बी अवेलेबल।
Thank you. Thank you so much. Last question.
Just one question, can I
Yeah,
have one?
yeah,
Firstly, starting off it was very comprehensive seminar. इसके अंदर सारे हम लोगों को जो main points थे और जो solutions थे for way forward वो understand हुआ. As an investigative journalist, मेरा बस एक concern और एक question था regarding my all humble, respectable participants and panelists. कि अभी इस when we're talking about the privatization of energy, power supply sector in Pakistan, गवर्नमेंट ने कुछ ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस बनाए थे जैसे नीका है, जैसे एनर्जी कंजर्वेशन एनर्जी के सेक्टर इनका, और साथ पेप्को हो गया, और इवन नेस्पार्क। वाई इन अदारों को अभी तक गवर्नमेंट ने रिटेन करके रखा हुआ है? व्हाट माइट बी द रीजंस कि इसको क्लोज क्यों नहीं किया जा रहा? इवन अगर हम उसको थोड़ा सा अगर देखा जाए कि वी डू हैव सम लाइक अ बिट ऑफ अ कंट्रोवर्शियल और शेडी कुछ इनके कुछ थे इसके अंदर, तो व्हाई द गवर्नमेंट हैज नॉट बीन एबल टू क्लोज देम? और हम इस तरफ अगर जा रहे हैं प्राइवेटाइजेशन की तरफ, I'll be very honored कि अगर आप लोग उसका आंसर करें। थैंक यू।
मैं तो सबसे पहले ये क्लोजिंग का आपने जो जिक्र किया ना, तो देखें हर इदारे की बैकएंड पे बहुत एफर्ट हुई है और अभी भी जो लोग हैं वो कुछ करना चाह रहे हैं, कुछ डिलीवर करना चाह रहे हैं। द पॉइंट इज के हमारा जो एनर्जी पिरामिड है उसको मतलब हमने वक्तन जो सही वक्त पे सही स्टेप्स नहीं लिए, जिसकी वजह से मार्केट जो है वो ओवरलैप हो गई है। मतलब नॉर्मली डिमांड साइड मैनेजमेंट, एनर्जी एफिशिएंसी, रिन्यूएबल एनर्जी, ये सारी चीजें टॉप ऑफ द पिरामिड आरी आता है। अब आरी नीचे आ गया है सबसे पहले बाय वर्च्यू ऑफ द कॉस्ट और एफिशिएंसी, और ये चीजें जरा थोड़ा सा, लेकिन डजंट मीन कि आप यू हैव टू नॉट लुक इनटू दोस थिंग्स। इंस्टीट्यूशंस जो हैं वो डेफिनेटली दे हैव देयर स्पेसिफिक एक्टिविटीज टू वर्क आउट, बट अगर उनको एनेबलिंग एनवायरनमेंट नहीं मिलेगा तो हाउ दे आर गोइंग टू परफॉर्म। रिसोर्सेज चाहिए आपको, फाइनेंशियल बजट चाहिए। तो मतलब यही मतलब काफ़ी इंटरनेशनल अरीना में यही डिपार्टमेंट्स ने, इनकी पॉलिसी लेवल इंटरवेंशंस ने एक इमेज बनाया पाकिस्तान का। तो वी शुड लाइक एटलीस्ट लुक इनटू कि ये इदारे जैसा नियम का आपका नेस्पाक की एक्टिविटी है, नीका पर्सपेक्टिव से देखें तो अभी भी काफ़ी इंटरवेंशंस जो हैं वो कोशिश भी जारी है और आगे रहनी भी चाहिए। और पहले भी कोशिशें रही हैं कि मतलब उसको डिमांड साइड मैनेजमेंट टॉप साइड पे दे, लेकिन हालात वाक़यात अब ऐसे बन चुके हैं कि जिसमें डिमांड बढ़ाने की बात हो रही है। तो हम यहाँ पर रैशनल ये ले सकते हैं कि रीबाउंड इफेक्ट ऑफ एनर्जी एफिशिएंसी पे जाएं, अप्लायंसेस मतलब, और इसको एट्रीब्यूट करें टुवर्ड्स ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट इंडेक्स। ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट इंडेक्स के मुताबिक आपका 2000 से 4000 किलोवाट आवर्स पर कैपिटा कंजम्पशन पर एनम हो तो एक मतलब वेल आप समझते हैं कि यू आर नॉट डिप्राइव्ड फ्रॉम योर बेसिक राइट ऑफ इलेक्ट्रिसिटी। लेकिन 4000 से ऊपर भी जाना इट डजंट मेक सेंस जो इंटरनेशनल रिसर्च रही है। तो हमारी तो पर कैपिटा अगर देखी जाए तो 1000 मतलब वो थ्रेशोल्ड 2000-3000 भी पार नहीं कर रही। सो ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट इंडेक्स, ये सारी चीजें और ये निदारों का रहना, इनको रिसोर्सेज देना, हाँ स्ट्रेटेजिक डायरेक्शंस दी जाएं गवर्नमेंट की तरफ से तो दे डू कम एंड आउट परफॉर्म, बट दे नीड रिसोर्सेज। और जो भी जहाँ है दे लाइक उनको पूरा मौका, उनको पूरी फैसिलिटेशन मिलनी चाहिए डिलीवर करने की एट द एंड ऑफ द डे। सो दिस इज व्हाट, क्योंकि ये इदारे इतनी आसानी से नहीं बनते, पीछे जो है डेफिनेटली एक रैशनल होता है और इंस्टीट्यूशंस के जो अपने मैंडेट्स हैं दे, और प्रोविंसेस के खास तौर पे उनके साथ मिलकर जो अदारे नाम लिए हैं, तो अब प्रोविंशियल डोमेन भी आ चुकी है, तो दे हैव टू वर्क हैंड इन हैंड, फिर रिजल्ट्स आएंगे। तो हम सिर्फ एक एंगल से या वो टनल विजन से देखेंगे, हमें लगता है कुछ नहीं हो रहा, लेकिन बैक एंड पे बहुत से काम हो रहा होता है। सो आई विल स्टॉप ओवर हियर।
Many thanks. Thank you.
सॉरी के हम प्राइवेटाइजेशन की बात कर रहे हैं, यस, बट वी आल्सो सेड कि आपको रेगुलेटरी फ्रेमवर्क्स चाहिए होते हैं। यू नीड द राइट sort of drive for the market. तो आप इदारों को खत्म, what we're talking about is के यूटिलिटी या सर्विसेज को हम प्राइवेटाइज कर रहे हैं, लेकिन वो इदारे जो आपको रेगुलेटरी फ्रेमवर्क दे रहे हैं या मार्केट को एक स्ट्रक्चर दे रहे हैं, उनको खत्म नहीं कर सकते आप, राइट? हाँ, उनकी एफिशिएंसी बढ़ा सकते हैं, हाँ, because once this goes out of the government's hand, the government will have more time to, concentrate on, instead of the administrative, ये वाली साइड पे वो ज्यादा कॉन्सेंट्रेट कर सकेगी। बट इन इदारों के बगैर तो फिर आप वो यू विल बी लुकिंग एट द 2007 हाउस होल्ड बबल अमेरिका का, financial chaos.
I just want to add a last question here. Okay, I was waiting कि शायद ये बात discuss होगी. I see कि in the report as well as in the discussion today, KE model is being presented as a success story. But my perspective is that if we are discussing the lessons learned from the previous privatization, then why are we not discussing how KE's privatization also failed at some points? Like right now as well. K electric consumers को they're being charged much higher than other discos. तो अगर हम प्राइवेटाइजेशन को उस एस्पेक्ट में डिस्कस कर रहे हैं तो हम लोग ये वाला एस्पेक्ट क्यों नहीं देख रहे जो कंज्यूमर्स के उसके बाद फिर अभी के इलेक्ट्रिक को फर्दर जो सब्सिडीज currently मिल रही है approximately 160 billion की which is more than the combined total of 10 discos. So if it is enhancing efficiency in the power sector, then why is government still subsidizing this utility? And then this aspect of circular debt जो काफी highlight हुआ उसके अंदर अब एक report के हिसाब से था कि how will the issue of circular debt be resolved when this privatization happens? Obviously कोई भी purchase नहीं करेगा unless the government plans to resolve this debt issue before you privatize it. So does the government have that capacity कि वो पहले इन जो independent जितनी भी discos हैं उनका circular debt resolve करे और उसके बाद फिर हम इनकी privatization की तरफ जाएं? And lastly, like Miss Amina ने भी, I think she left, but उन्होंने भी ये बात point out की है कि नेपरा का regulatory role है सिर्फ. तो अगर हम इस privatization की तरफ जाते हैं तो how will these गवर्नमेंट एंटिटीज या जो रेगुलेटरी मतलब उनका रोल कैसे चेंज होगा और उसके अंदर फिर एसेट्स की डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन कैसे होगी उसके बाद इसके अंदर जो करंट एम्प्लॉइज हैं गवर्नमेंट के हाउ विल दे बी सॉल्व. तो ये एक अगर हम एनालिसिस कर रहे हैं प्राइवेटाइजेशन का तो ये वाले एस्पेक्ट्स को भी देखना आई थिंक है. सिर्फ के इलेक्ट्रिक की एक स्टोरी को आई थिंक एनालाइज करके हमें नहीं प्रेजेंट कर देना चाहिए. क्या कोई ऑल्टरनेटिव्स हमने सोचे हैं लाइक टर्किश मॉडल जो गवर्नमेंट अभी डिस्कस कर रही है. आई डिड नॉट हेयर दिस वर्ड या कंसेशनरी रिजीम का या नॉन कंसेशनरी रिजीम. आई डिड नॉट हेयर दिस मॉडल एट ऑल. तो हाउ डज दिस कम इनटू प्ले जो कि मेन एस्पेक्ट है अभी गवर्नमेंट के पास कंसेशनरी रिजीम के जो कि टर्किश मॉडल को इम्प्लीमेंट कर जिसमें सिर्फ मैनेजमेंट को प्राइवेटाइज किया जा रहा है. थैंक यू.
Okay, thank you. We have a representative from K Electric Online who would like to answer this question. Mr. Imran, please, over to you. Mr. Imran, are we audible to you? Okay, Ms. Alina, over to you then.
So I'm just gonna give you 2-3 things. Okay. Yes, like I said, K Electric के lessons learned भी हैं. K Electric is not free market. It is a monopoly. Like any discos, हाँ उसको हमने private hands में दे दिया था. ठीक है. 2015 में उसका contract amendment हुआ था. When we changed वो and उससे पहले 600 megawatt it was taking from the grid. Right. It was also taking some gas subsidized off the grid from the government, right, to produce. And that was just to give it, or sir बैठे हुए हैं, and that was to give it, और उस वक्त हमने ये contract इसलिए किया था कि उनको एक support देने के लिए till they can manage, क्योंकि employees का था, offload करना था, they had to give handshakes, you know, to set themselves up. तो हमने एक agreement किया था उनके साथ for a tenure of time. 2015 में we had to revise that tenure and we had to make it a little more harsh to push them to that. So yes, there are lessons learned from KE. जहाँ तक utilities की बात है, like you said, yes, ये already हो चुकी है एक study. Like I said, 2014 के IMF प्रोग्राम के अंदर DPC 1 और DPC 2 में ऑलरेडी ये स्टडी हो चुकी है कि एसेट्स डिविजन कैसे होगी, हैंडशेक्स किस तरह जाएंगे, और इसमें मेपको, आईएसको, लेस्को और फेस्को पे ये ऑलरेडी हो चुका है. एंड आई थिंक गेपको पे भी हो रहा था DPC 2 में, इफ आई एम नॉट रॉन्ग, व्हेन आई लेफ्ट. तो ये ऑलरेडी हो चुका है कि एसेट्स किस तरह होंगे, जोन वाइज किस तरह डिवाइड होगा. Circular debt is a very big conversation. You have to understand the difference between the stock and the flow of circular debt, but how these privatizations were going to then flow back into revising that circular debt, वो भी एक plan बना हुआ है एक time पे, but it didn't work out for certain reasons. But like I said, these things are working and the government has those plans in place and they are working on this. And then we have, yes, like Sir said, we've moved slow on it for different reasons, political backgrounds, whatever, programs change, priorities changed. But the plans are there. And ye sari cheezein already hai. Obviously, government cannot disclose the asset divisions or how it's going to go about this because वो थोड़ा सा sensitive nature है चीजों का and वो internally काम करेगी अपना. But as much as I know that KE has, yes, KE does have the most expensive tariff. They are moving towards renewable. They are moving towards cheaper tariff because उनकी सारी generation उस वक्त expensive fuel पे थी. It was on RFO और वो और उनको gas दिया गया था बंद करने के लिए RFO वाला को for a while, right? So ये सारी चीजें, these are also lessons learned. Yes, absolutely, I agree.
Thank you.
So that's why I pointed out. And then
Hello.
Will be
questioning how do you prevent regional monopolies being formed?
let's hear to KE's perspective on that.
Yeah.
Hi, Assalamu alaikum ji. My name is Imran Rana and I'm part of marketing teams here. Really pleased कि आपने मुझे एक कुछ सवालों पे जवाब देने के लिए एक मौका दिया. अच्छा, first of all, I just want to just quickly discuss about the renewables part. One of the questions was about KE wind corridor के ऊपर क्यों focus नहीं कर रहा. So I'll be very quickly covering that part. कि इलेक्ट्रिक की अगला जो हमारे आने वाला टैरिफ है उसका रिन्यूएबल्स एक इम्पॉर्टेंट उसका एजेंडा है. सो हमारे पास ऑलमोस्ट 1300 मेगावाट एज अ यूटिलिटी वी आर गोइंग टू ऐड इन नेक्स्ट 7 years. उसमें से 640 मेगावाट्स के प्रोजेक्ट्स ऑलरेडी कई ने इस वक्त रोल आउट कर दिए हुए हैं और उसके अंदर जो प्रोजेक्ट्स हैं, एक प्रोजेक्ट्स पर्टिकुलरली इसमें हाइब्रिड नेचर का, इसमें विंड का एलिमेंट भी शामिल है. And not very long ago, just I think last week, Bloomberg said that as a power utility, single-handedly, KE is going to double Pakistan's, renewable capacity from 600 something megawatt to around 1200 megawatts in just next 2.5 years time. So this is very my quick, comment on this part. अच्छा, दूसरा एक बड़ा interesting part discuss हुआ है, this which is about tariff. देखिए, we have to understand that as a country we operate under uniform tariff policy. So government जब subsidy देती है, the government customer को subsidy देती है, not to KE. Since privatization जो important point है कि KE को zero operational subsidy दी गई है. Operational subsidy I understand क्योंकि power sector के experts यहाँ पे मौजूद हैं, they understand what I'm talking about. So subsidy की तरफ से जो है ये element ज़हन में रखना चाहिए. और दूसरा part एक और बात हुई है कि KE की generation जो है वो expensive है. It's a very relative term actually when we talk about कि cost क्या है generation की KE की. So for instance, when RLNG plants were were introduced here, so उस वक्त RLNG globally was cheaper. Right. At the same time के साथ साथ जो हमारे पास लोकल गैस का जो एक एलोकेशन आ रही थी जिसके ऊपर हमारी जनरेशन डिपेंड करती थी, वो लोकल गैस का कोटा KE को नहीं मिल रहा है फॉर अ लॉन्ग टाइम, जिसकी वजह से इट्स अगेन आई से इट्स अ रिलेटिव टर्म कि जनरेशन की कॉस्ट क्या है. हाउएवर मैम, you very rightly said कि we are working very consciously over the next 7 years जिसमें हम लोग indigenous fuels and renewables in दो areas पे काम कर रहे हैं, जिसपे we are trying to add at least 2000 megawatt or plus minus capacity, जो कि absolutely उसमें से zero imported fuels का element होगा. The entire capacity is going to be added on IPPs based model based on indigenous fuels or on renewables, जिसमें 640 megawatt के projects already renewables के जो projects हमारे market में हैं, and we are working very in a speedy manner inshallah and to take the things forward. और अगर कोई question होगा तो I'm just here to respond. Will be very pleased to chip in जी.
Thank you, Imran Saab. With this, we'll be wrapping up this discussion. One question. Okay. Okay. I would request Qasim Saab to please present the vote of thanks to participants and panelists.
Thank you so much, Zainab. I'm indeed thankful to the worthy panelists for today, also the participants. One thing which has amazed me in this seminar is the kind of harmonization among thoughts of all the panelists. That they are pretty much in favor of the privatization, and they are putting it as a panacea for all our ills in the power sector. Let's see how it works, especially when I actually was amused when I listened to Ms. Amina and then Ms. Selina repeated the same thing, that we need to take a cautious approach. And that was the only point of difference between the earlier presentation and the presentation they delivered for me. The second thing which I wanted to share here is that, yeah, unless there is an economic activity, perhaps the domestic consumer will continue to suffer. How long? Let's see when the economic activity actually starts taking place in the country. And with these words, I conclude here. Thank you so much again for your participation, and thanks for coming to STPI. And we look forward to receive you in the next seminar.
Thank you, everyone.